What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2019 Kia K900. Huge thanks to Kia for providing me with this very classy looking K900 to review for you guys today. So about the Kia K900, well, it's all new now with this second generation version we're getting here in the States, and it is really good looking to me. Now, if I know a lot of people will say it looks similar to a lot of the other, German luxury sedans and stuff, which is partially true. It does blend in, but I do think it has a unique style all its own, especially whenever you consider that, all the German brands, they have a very corporate nose, and many of those vehicles, the entire lineup looks basically the same, just in small, medium, and large. This, I think, is a nice distinctive look. It separates it from, a lot of the competitors, while still, again, like I said, blending in. But you have that very cool headlamp arrangement there with like the double LED ropes there, stacked vertically on top of each other instead of the usual stuff you see with a lot of other more unoriginal headlight designs. And I think that's actually pretty creative. I also think it's really creative the way they did the grille here. So it's not your typical star pattern or, a normal mesh type setup like you usually see in other vehicles. This has got like some wave and it's like more three-dimensional and looks really good. Again, if you were to cover the Kia badges on this, people would definitely guess that it's one of those premium brands for sure. Looks really, really nice up front there. Coming down to the sides, you have these very attractive 19-inch wheels that have this little bit of a smoked kind of polished look to them. Look really good. Even the little center caps there have almost like a knurled look to them. It all just screams very classy. By the way, these tires are also Michelin Pilot Sport All Season, so pretty sporty tire setup for a luxury sedan like this, and should really help it have more grip than a lot of its competitors as well with their more mundane tire setups. Otherwise, they're coming down to the sides here. You have this little indent that goes all the way down the length of the vehicle, which I think is a cool look. Going out back there, you have taillights that very much echo the headlamp design, and I think it looks good. This vehicle, by the way, as far as the class of vehicle that you can compare it against, as far as the competitors go, it's kind of tough because it's kind of in between. These are larger than a 5 Series or an E-Class, but it is smaller than an S-Class or a 7 Series as far as length and width and all that goes. So it's kind of in between the two. So it's kind of, you get more vehicle size for the money, than what you would get with the mid-size luxury stuff, but, it's obviously way less expensive, but also a little bit smaller than the full-size stuff. So you can't really compare it to those either in some ways. But overall, I think it's a very classy look here, especially in this snow white color. It really looks great, and overall, I think they did a great job of the styling on the K900 here. Right, for the interior of the Kia K900, well, it is so nice. Again, if you cover the Kia badges, most people would say they're in a Mercedes, most likely. It is just so nice. So, first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these beautiful brown seats here in this one, and I love the white piping. It's more like a cream colored piping. It's really great. You also have the quilted sides to the seats here. They're completely adjustable. They have adjustable bolstering, multiple direction lumbar support. I mean, everything in the seat is so nice. You also have a thigh extension support if you want. Just so comfortable, these seats. The only thing I can critique these seats for is not having a massage function. That is something that a lot of the competing vehicles do offer, at least as an option. This one doesn't have that as an option. These are heated and ventilated seats, and the cooling is spectacular, by the way. It's a lot more effective than even some of the German brands with their ventilated seats. These are actually cooled seats. They will get you cold. It's really great. And so overall, I mean, they're super comfortable seats too, although I will say it's weird. The passenger seat, the seat bottom is firmer on the passenger seat than it is on the driver's. The driver's is nice and plush. The passenger, maybe it just needs broken in more or something, I don't know. But that one wasn't quite as plush. But overall, just really great seats. Next, the steering wheel here in the Kia K900, which is different for sure. Just the design of it here, especially towards the bottom. But I actually don't mind it. The wood trim on here, it's not real. It does feel a little fake. It has a little bit of a grain to it, but not super convincing there. But I do like the stitching on it and the metal buttons. It has a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches. And even the paddle shifters here are like metal plated all the way around. And even like BMWs and stuff, it's only metal on the front, and the back is like a rubberized plastic. This is metal all the way around. And again, not quite as heavy as some other like really high-end sports cars with their metal paddle shifters, but does still feel very nice for a vehicle that's almost never going to be using paddle shifters. It's nice that they went to the trouble of making them as nice as they are. But all the metal buttons here in the front are great, but there's not a million buttons either. It's just a few and very manageable, and overall a really great steering wheel. Next are the gauges. Now, these digital gauges are part of the VIP package, which is $4,000 and worth every penny because there's so many nice upgrades. In addition to the gauges, very briefly as an aside, you get this like suede headliner is one of the other nice upgrades you get. It also gives you a way more luxurious back seat, which I'll get to in a minute. But anyway, worth the upgrade, even if it's just for these gauges alone. They are so sweet. Not only do they just look really great, and I like the layout of them here, you have a few basic things to scroll through there in the middle. I do still wish that they would offer a media setting there so you could see what's playing on the radio or the stereo or whatever. And Kia refuses to put that in their center clusters. And I thought it was just because the old cluster didn't have the functionality with the little center screen that was small. But now we have a completely digital gauge set. We should be able to, you know, have some way to show the song title in the gauges, and you don't have that there. That's the only complaint I have. Otherwise, it is super sweet, especially with all the different themes you have for the gauges there. I mean, there's a bunch of different looks, and especially that green one is very cool because it completely changes. It's not just different coloring for these gauges. It completely changes the design of the gauge, you know, for the speedometer and tachometer there, and is so cool looking. And so I really love just how customizable they are in that regard. Now, they're still not as customizable as Cadillac's gauges, you know, or especially Mercedes. Both of those are kind of the kings right now of having, you know, you can customize every single little thing, and it's very cool. One cool thing that this gauge cluster does have that the high-end German stuff doesn't is that whenever you put on your turn signal, it'll actually display a blind spot camera there in whichever pod you're looking at. So left turn signal would be in the speedometer pod there, the right turn signal would put it into the tach there. And so that's very cool. You also do have a heads-up display here, which doesn't show you too much, but does show like a speed limit, your active cruise, or, you know, speedometer all in there. And so nice to have that nonetheless. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, you have this nice widescreen display. I believe it's like 12.3 inches. It's just a huge widescreen display. It's also almost identical, I think, to the same one you get in the new Kia Telluride. So I just covered that not too long ago. And so basically the same screen here. I love this setup. I absolutely love it. It is so cool looking, but also very simple. And, you know, with some of the Germans, especially since this is what this vehicle is competing with, some of those are really confusing, especially the Idrive system from BMW is so overly complicated. This is wonderfully simple, but still does all the basics great. You have, you know, the three main things you most often use, all displayed right there. You can customize them and move, you know, whichever one you want around. And even when you go into, like, you know, the navigation map, one touch, it's all just widescreen. There's a few things just to zoom it or, you know, go home or put in an address, and that's basically it. It is so refreshing how easy this is to work. Anyone can hop in this, and within 30 seconds you feel right at home. You don't have to spend an afternoon programming it and learning it like you do with Idrive. So I love that about this system. And so you can still do like a split screen thing if you want to do it in there, you know, and if you prefer that type of a setup. But I really love having these three tiles, and that's it. It also has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's also great considering, you know, BMW in particular does not do Android Auto still. So if you're an Android user, your options are Mercedes, this, and, you know, a couple of the other brands, but that, you know, is great that it has both of those too. And so overall, I absolutely love this infotainment system. It's also tied into a 900-watt Lexicon stereo here in the K900, which is a really powerful stereo. And I love all the metal speaker grills, which again do a very, I mean, they're basically identical to what you get in a Mercedes. And they look so good. I mean, it's heavy metal, it's cold to the touch, and they just look so high-end. Another thing that looks pretty high-end. So you have this row of metal buttons here, a volume and a tune knob, which again, you don't even get a tune knob in some of the competing vehicles these days. So great to have both of those there too. And then coming down, you have this Maurice LaCroix clock. I have no clue about watch brands if that's special or not, but it looks very nice and classy, so a nice little touch. And then just a basic row of climate buttons here. And one unique thing that this vehicle also has that I think is the first that I've ever seen, at least, is a two-stage heated steering wheel. Usually heated steering wheels, it's just one setting, it gets hot, and you turn it off when it's too hot. This has two settings, so I guess one low and one high. So if you want just a little bit of heat, you can have that, and that's a cool little feature that I think they've evolved beyond, you know, what all the competing vehicles offer. And so that's all very nice. But again, all these buttons are cool to the touch, you know, pretty nice metal. I don't think the metal feels quite as heavy as the metal buttons you get in Mercedes, but it's first close and to most people, you know, indiscernible. And at night you even have a proximity thing, so as you approach these buttons they will get brighter with their illumination, so you can more easily see what you need to press. I also do like this wood trim, so you know, it does have a very distinct texture to it, and you know, I don't think it's quite as nice feeling as, again, Mercedes would or something like that, but again, is very, very close. But really every single square inch of this vehicle feels nice. The only spot that does not have either a metal, wood, or soft leather feel to it is this little panel over here on the left hand side where the headlight controls and stuff are. That is the only hard piece of plastic I can find in this entire vehicle at, you know, I guess arm level. Everything, you know, the door is padded, you have this you know, like ribbing to the leather here, all this brown leather feels great, the transmission tunnel's all covered, even, you know, the start button area is all covered and has got some give to it. Every square inch is just so nice feeling. And another thing, getting back to the center here, you have this shifter, which feels great, very similar to the one in the top-end Kia Stinger. As far as storage space in this K900, it's also very good. So first off, in the doors, you have a pretty nicely sized pocket. It doesn't have an actual bottle holder in it, though. That's the only thing that's a little bit of a bummer. I wish it did, but it doesn't. Coming over to the center here, though, you do have this nice cover that opens up, and then you'll see a normal power outlet, a USB jack, and then also a Qi wireless charging pad, which is great. And it's a nice size pad, so you can fit all kinds of phones in there with ease, and it's a little bit rubberized so they don't slide around too much. And so nice to have that. Not a ton of space, but, you know, really great to put your phone there. And then you have your two cup holders under this cover, which are, you know, a nice size. Then you have the center armrest, which, just like the German competition, splits in the middle. And then you open that up, and then you will see a decent amount of space in there. Not super deep, but a little deeper than some of the Germans. And so anyway, you have a power outlet and a USB jack in there, as well as a little coin tray up top that's removable and slidable. And so a good amount of space in there. You can easily fit sunglass cases, stuff like that in there. Backseat in the K900 is so luxurious. It is really, really nice. So first off, you know, it's just a very roomy backseat as well, because you have, you know, a lot of space. You know, this being a longer vehicle than a 5 Series, something like that, but shorter than a 7 Series, you're kind of in between as far as legroom. But I mean, I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself, I easily have at least 6 inches of legroom to spare, probably a little more than that. One thing with this VIP package, you have these reclinable seats too in the back there, so you can even recline those, and then I still have plenty of space. So I mean, a very luxurious back seat. And so part of this VIP package is a few things. First off, you'll see there's those little air vents there on the B pillar. That's part of it. You also have the tri-zone climate control as part of the VIP package, so you can see that there as you look forward, with the air vents and a display for your climate. And you might be wondering where you actually control the climate at, since that's just a screen, and that is all controlled with that center armrest, which you flip down, and then there's a ton of controls in there. And so that's where you'll see everything. All of the controls for climate are in there. You'll see your stereo controls. You can change, you know, all type of stuff there with all those buttons. That's where you also will find the controls for the heated and ventilated seats. Now, you get heat as standard, but the ventilated outboard seats there in the back are part of this VIP package as well. And also, you know, the center armrest, which is pretty nice and softly padded, and you have a nice deep space there under there to store things as well. And you even have a wireless charging pad back there. Now, that's also part of the VIP package, but it's been a few years since I've been in the back of a 7 Series or something like that. But even the back of a Rolls-Royce doesn't have a wireless charging pad in the back there, so that's awesome. You'll also see in the front of that center console is where your cup holders are, and a very nice, comfortable back seat. Again, the only thing that it's missing is massage, and that is something that, like, even the Lexus LS offers for its VIP rear seat package, and, you know, also the Cadillac CT6 offers that. And, you know, honestly, comparing it to a CT6, this is a lot more luxurious inside as far as the materials and stuff, but, you know, the Cadillac offers some of those high-end features that this doesn't. But overall, that is the only feature that's missing. Otherwise, that is such a nice back seat. Trunk space in the K900 is also pretty good, so I'd say it's on par with your 5 Series and E-Class, stuff like that. So pretty good amount of space. You know, it's a nice long space, pretty wide. Should easily be able to fit 4 people's, you know, luggage with ease, I think. There isn't any kind of space underneath the floor or anything. You'll just see your spare tire and stuff under there. But otherwise, you know, still a good amount of space, right on par with everything else in this class for the most part. And, you know, it's also pretty cool too that whenever it's all, of course, a power open and close trunk, but actually if you just walk up behind this vehicle and stand there for about 4 to 5 seconds, it'll automatically pop open. You don't have to swipe your feet. You don't have to do any gesturing or anything. You literally just stand there. It beeps 4 times and then opens up. All right, so start to go for a drive. The K900 here has this very nice this Kia key. It's the same one as the Stinger, which I love in the Stinger. It's got a nice like vinyl texture to it, even got some little stitching on it. But I love that the buttons are on the side here and then your lock button is on the top. Now, of course, this vehicle does lock automatically if you walk away from it too. That's something else you can set up, or just the buttons on the doors. But if you want to still use the key, it's like a trigger button. I love this key design. It is so cool. And so a fantastic key, actually nicer than some of the competing keys, honestly, in my opinion. And of course, keyless access, like I said, keyless entry, push button start. So just leave the key in your pocket, hit the metal engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2019 Kia K900. So the first thing you notice, just at very low speeds here, driving through a parking lot, is that it's just a very smooth, substantial ride. This feels like a nice big luxury vehicle, not in an overwhelming way, just in a really substantial, like, you know, this feels every bit of its price tag and then some. You know, it definitely feels like you're driving something much more expensive than this even is. And so it's just really great. Now, one thing as far as maneuverability and stuff goes, you know, it has a bunch of cameras just like all the competing vehicles. So you have a backup camera, you have a 360 camera, you even have a forward-facing camera, and so that really helps with parking and everything to make that all very, very easy. And another thing that makes it easy is visibility is actually really good. So actually a little bit better, I think, than some of the competitors again. So looking forward here, you have a, you know, pretty thin A-pillar that, you know, you have a little bit of a corner blockage here with the mirror and everything mounted there, but really not bad. View out of the back is also really great with a nice square rear window there. And so overall, you know, a very easy vehicle to drive, even though it is, you know, pretty large. Other things to note here right off the bat, steering is nicely weighted, not too light, but not too heavy, just, again, feels kind of expensive. Throttle response is also pretty sharp. There's a little tiny bit of a tip in, and then it's just very responsive with a buttery smooth, milky kind of forward push you get here. It just all feels very expensive and refined, the entire driving experience. Brakes also have a little bit of a mush to them, but I think they did that deliberately to, again, make it so you can be, it's very easy to be smooth with the brakes. You know, you have to really try to be jerky with your stops. Like, even if I'm like slamming the brakes, it like wants to be more gradual. Like, obviously it will stop fast, but it never wants to be rough. And so it is so easy to drive this car smoothly that even if you're like left foot braking, you know, and you've never left foot brake before, it still is like a smooth stopping experience. It's kind of amazing. So there's a nice dampening to the brake pedal, and again, just something to give it a little bit of an extra air of luxury about it. It's also pretty quiet. Now, I'm only doing 25 miles an hour right now, but even with the engine at almost 2,000 RPMs here, it is very subdued. It is so quiet in here, and that's not just at low speeds. Even at high speeds, it's much quieter than many vehicles. Like, my wife owns a C-Class, and this is definitely quieter than that. Obviously, this is a class up, but it's still very quiet. But we're going to go ahead and put it into the Sport Drive mode, and let's turn onto this back road and see how it does. Okay, so a little bit of a delay, and then it gets up and goes very, very nicely. So it's definitely a strong engine. So the new K900 here runs the same exact engine as the Kia Stinger GT. So that means you have a 3.3 liter twin turbo V6 engine that does 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque, just like in the Stinger GT. And in this vehicle, it'll actually do 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. So definitely slower than the Stinger GT. But that's because this vehicle is a little bit on the heavy side. So that's really the big headline here, is the weight of the K900, which I'll talk about more on a back road. But these weigh 4,738 pounds, according to Car and Driver's actual curb weight test. And so at 4,700 pounds and change, you're looking at a vehicle that is definitely more heavy than stuff like the E-Class and the 5 Series, and actually is about as heavy as like a 7 Series or an S-Class. So you're talking about something that is as heavy as those, but is a little bit smaller than those. So it just gives you a very bulky feeling, which again, could give you, you know, an expensive feeling, but also means that, you know, it's just a lot of weight to get up and move. So, you know, that's why the reflexes, whenever you floor it, I mean, you know, it'll get up and move, but you're moving something very heavy. So it's kind of like a Bentley in that way, where it, you know, it's something that you can't really rush around in this vehicle because it does have that heft to it, and because of that, you're forced to kind of just relax and you know, kind of cruise a little bit more. But it does have plenty of power, and like I said, the powertrain is so well suited to this vehicle, being nice and milky with its delivery, that you know, it just gives you a very luxurious feeling experience. But we're gonna do some corners here, and let's see how the K900 handles despite that weight. You know, it's actually doing better than I was expecting. So yeah, it definitely feels heavy, but it is surprisingly flat and pretty grippy. Again, I think that's these Pilot Sport all-season tires you have here, 245 wide in the front, 275s in the rear on these 19-inch wheels. And I think it's also, you got these adaptable suspension, you know, the damping is a little bit firmer, and that's something you can customize. And so in sport mode here, you know, it's very set up to be, you know, a little bit stiffer and sportier. It also works together with the all-wheel drive system, which is standard here in the K900s now, and that has a rear bias to it in sport mode, which is great. And so you have that, you have heavier steering here, which helps a little bit, although there still isn't a ton of feel through the wheel, but just has a little bit of a heavier weight to it, which is nice. And so that's really great. And then you have the more responsive powertrain, of course, because you have the engine in its sport mode as well, and so it's wanting to keep me in the higher RPMs and the meat of the power band here, which is great. And then there isn't any kind of dedicated manual mode, but like I said, you have these paddle shifters, so if you want to play with them. Now, this is Kia's 8-speed transmission they built in-house, and it's also the same one you get in the Stinger GT. And here, it's pretty quick. It's not as quick as the Stinger, but I didn't expect it to be, because, you know, it's going to have a more comfort-oriented tune to it in order to, you know, I guess give people what they're looking for in a K900, which is luxury. If you want a sport sedan, go for a Stinger GT. I love them. They're fantastic. And, you know, they also have a lot of the same metal components that you get here in this. So you're not missing out on a ton of luxury. This does have a cushier feel to it than the Stinger. But if you want something that's going to handle amazing, Kia already has your answer. This is set up to be a cruiser, and so that's why you don't have lightning fast paddle shifters. You don't have, you know, a super lightweight feeling or anything. You have that weightier feeling, but I think K900 buyers, that's what they're going to want. But I'm going to try another acceleration here and try and force it to stay in first gear and see how it does. I wanted to go to second again. There's a first. And then it hustles. It really does pull strong. And I even noticed at one point, accelerating out of the one corner, that this rear bias system, it almost wanted to kick out of me a little bit. It wasn't sketchy or anything, but just, I could feel if you really push this, it will play with you. And I like that about it. And I also just like that they decided to put Pilot Sport tires on this. Even if they're the all-season sports, it still is a much sportier tire than most of the competitors put on their, you know, run-of-the-mill E-classes and 5 Series. And so that's very commendable as well. They actually, you know, thought about the enthusiasts a little bit and, you know, wanted to give it good handling, and I really appreciate that. And so because of that, you know, like I said, you have really a good amount of grip, and despite the heavy weight, you know, I don't feel like I'm really being held back necessarily. You know, it's just it's a weightier feel, so I'm not going to be able to autocross in this as well as I would in a Stinger. But, you know, for hustling down a back road here, this is actually better than I was expecting. You know, I read the spec sheet and I'm like, ooh, 4,700 pounds in a vehicle that's smaller than a 7 Series. That is going to be one hefty thing to chuck into a corner. But then when I'm actually out here doing it, it's not bad. Again, you have some weight and it will push a little bit, but it's pretty neutral and just feels really good. Like, way better than you would expect this to feel, honestly, at least in sport mode here. And yeah, I can feel that back end wanting to kind of help push me out of the corner and work with me to kind of get this thing around the bend as fast as it can go, and it does a really good job. Wow, I am impressed. Another thing that's cool is, you know, there's actually a few different drive modes. Of course, I'm in sport on this back road here, but there's a comfort mode. There's also an auto mode that will kind of switch between the modes intelligently. And then there's also a custom mode. And the custom mode allows you to custom tweak things, much like you get in a lot of the high-end German competition as well. And so with this, you can do everything. You can have the transmission, the engine in different settings there. You can have the, you know, like the steering in heavy, but then you can have the suspension in super soft Comfort Plus mode if you want. And so you can tweak that, and so if you want to have certain things one way and certain things the other. You have a custom mode, and you can have it exactly the way that you want. So you can custom tailor the seats exactly the way you want. You can have the driving dynamics exactly the way you want. Everything is totally customizable here in the K900, and overall I really enjoy it. I mean, the last thing really to mention here in the first few minutes is that it's just a very smooth, comfortable ride. It soaks up bumps very, very well. Even in sport mode here, I'm still in sport mode, and over a few bumps there, it was still totally comfortable. So it's just so quiet. The stereo is fantastic. Overall, I can't find anything to really complain about with the driving dynamics here on the K900. It is so nice. It feels much more expensive than its price tag suggests. But anyway, I'm going to drive this vehicle around for a whole week thanks to Kia loaning it to me here. So I'm going to drive around all week, and then I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy, as well as my thoughts on the pricing and any other things that I noticed here during my week of driving it. Alright, so I've been driving the 2019 Kia K900 here for a week now, and I've really enjoyed it a lot. I think this is a vehicle that if people weren't opposed to the Kia badge and you're open-minded enough to kind of consider this vehicle, then it is a really good value, but it's also just surprisingly good in more ways than you would expect. That's kind of what blew me away, is especially, you put this thing into the sport mode, and it is just amazing how well this thing goes around tight, corners and off ramps and stuff. And I love how the sport mode is tied into the adjustable bolstering too, so they will actually blow up there as soon as you're in sport mode and hug you around those corners, which is great. And then with this motor too, it's so strong having the Kia, the Stinger GT motor in this. It's really, I mean, for a vehicle that is so much heavier than a Stinger, I'm amazed how well this thing gets up and goes. It's way more athletic than you would expect it to be, but then whenever you have it in comfort mode, it honestly is so comfortable. The only thing that's even close to as soft as this is, I think, is like the Buick LaCrosses and stuff that I reviewed a few years ago. I mean, Cadillac CT6 has a firmer ride. Just about everything outside of a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce is going to have a firmer ride than this, and that's just the way they tuned this, because, even modern luxury sedans like the 5 Series and stuff, they have a soft ride, but they still, it's always about being sporty a little bit too. The Kia doesn't really try and be sporty, it just happens to be very good at that, but they didn't compromise anything. There isn't any kind of a balancing act here. With the adaptive dampers, it just kind of, will go sportier in that mode, but otherwise it's just very soft in an old school way. This really kind of reminds me of some of the older luxury stuff from even 10 years ago in a good way. It's soft and just spacious and luxurious and comfortable, and it just is a great sofa whenever you just want to have a lazy boy. You can cruise and be super comfortable in this. I still miss not having massage seats, that's the only thing. But I'm really enjoying it. So over my 150 miles now of driving, I averaged 17.5 mpg, and that was mostly city driving. There was a little bit of highway mixed in, but largely city driving. So these are rated at 18 in the city, 25 on the highway, and 21 combined. So I was hoping to at least get that 18 number, and I'm almost there. Having this engine as powerful as it is, toting around a vehicle that is, again, so heavy, that is going to, hold you back a little bit as far as fuel economy goes. And really, the last thing here I want to talk about is the competitors and the pricing here of the K900. So, like I said, this one is just under $65,000 with this VIP package. If it didn't have that, then you're looking at high 50s. But honestly, I would definitely go for the VIP package, if nothing else, like I said, for the gauges alone. But just all the other nice touches, I really like this suede headliner and everything. Just all those things, the VIP package makes this feel like it's more than a $65,000 car as far as the price tag goes. Without those stuff, if it had analog gauges and a cheaper headliner and stuff, I'd be like, not sure if this is a $50,000 car. But with those upgrades, 100%, this feels like an $80,000 car, to be honest. It feels super nice and luxurious. But so at $65,000, the thing that makes this vehicle a little bit of a tough seller, I think, is because you can get a reasonably equipped E-Class or 5 Series for $65,000 still. Those all start in the 50s, and so obviously you have to be much lighter on the options, and you probably won't get nearly as much equipment as you get in this. So this still does undercut it. And of course, like I said, this vehicle is also a little bit larger than those mid-size luxury sedans. It's in between the mid-size and the full-size ones. So you do get a bit of a bigger and grander car, I think, for your money. But I don't know if it undercuts the price enough to justify the Kia badge. And I think that's what, if this were 10 grand cheaper, I could see people jumping all over this. But at 65, you're getting up there. And obviously, I still think it's still a phenomenal value. But whenever you're fighting against brand perceptions and people wanting to have that recognition of, I have a Mercedes, I have a BMW, people will pay for that. And so even if they're paying for the badge a little bit, they don't mind because of that brand recognition. And I think for the Kia to justify itself, I think if it was even a few thousand cheaper, then it would certainly, I think, lure more of those people than it currently does. And I think that's why Genesis has kind of had some success. But interestingly, that is one thing. So this is based on the same type of platform as the Genesis G80 and G90. This is smaller than a G90, but bigger than a G80, I think, slightly. And this is also a little bit more expensive. But I honestly think, now I know the Genesis, both of them are kind of up for a redo here soon. I think actually here in the next few months, the G80 will be coming out with an all new version. And so maybe that'll address some of the concerns. But currently, as of when I film this here, the G80 interior is definitely not as nice as it is in the K900. The K900 here is far nicer than the G80's interior, and actually nicer than the G90's interior. Now the G90, you have a longer back seat. I think you do get a few more toys and stuff. But honestly, I would, at the current moment here, I would take this over both of those. Now, I will say the G80 feels a little more athletic, especially in its sport trim, which you can get, and I reviewed one of those last year. And then you get this same motor, but it's a slightly lighter vehicle, but it's just not as luxurious. It still is nice. It's a big luxury vehicle. It's still very soft and comfortable while still being pretty dynamic, and even, like I said, a little more athletic and light feeling than even this does. So that is, one of the pros there of the G80, but it still is, it just, the interior in those, I think that makes those a little bit harder to justify the price. They're nice, but, I think this is really phenomenal value as far as the packaging and what you get here. And I love this new infotainment display. I love all the metal touches and everything. There's just so much, the tech, this blind spot cameras and stuff are all pretty cool. And having this motor to just pull, it's very impressive how this thing drives. So yeah, overall, I think the K900 is a really compelling option, if people are willing to, not be worried about the badge. And I think you can still, it's a phenomenal value. It's a phenomenal vehicle, even independent. If you don't compare it to other stuff, and you just compare it, from a luxury vehicle, and you cover the badges, I think you'll be very impressed. It's very luxurious, a great vehicle to live with. And also one of the huge differentiators between this and all of the other luxury competition is, aside from the Genesis, none of the competitors offer a warranty as long as this does. And while a lot of the BMWs and the Mercedes and stuff are built to be lease specials, and they're worry-free for the first 3 years, and then some of them can become troublesome later on down the road, and that's generally why they depreciate so fast. And obviously these depreciate too, but at least with these, you have a 10-year warranty. None of those even come close. Most of their warranties on the competing vehicles are half that long. So if you're the type of person that leases a vehicle every 3 years, you're probably better off getting one of the German ones. But if you're actually going to buy something and keep it, this is a phenomenal value, even brand new. But then with the depreciation, if you can hold out for a year or two, these are going to be phenomenal values used as well. Although with the used one, you don't get the full 10-year warranty. It goes down to a 5-year at that point. So there is some incentive to buy, even if you do get a depreciation hit with buying a new one, you do get that 10-year warranty. And if you're planning to keep one of these forever, that's the way to go, because it means you're going to have a much more reliable vehicle, a vehicle that the manufacturer is going to stand behind, versus Mercedes and BMW just giving you large repair bills, after that first few years of service. And yeah, so that's another, strong thing in the Kia's favor here. But anyway, huge thanks to Kia for providing me with the K900 here to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the K900 in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.